there's a big like product-led growth. Everyone wants to be like Datadog, or everyone wants to be like Sneak, or everyone wants to be like Docker. I'm like, oh yeah, we don't need salespeople. Like, we're just gonna put our product out there. It's gonna be great. It's gonna sell itself. We're just gonna put all of our money and resources into product development, and we'll never have to deal with sales and marketing people ever again. Thank goodness. No, it's just not. It's just not real. People buy from people. I really believe that. Joel Horwitz, founder of Neoteric 3D, which stands for Digital Design and Data. I like my coffee black. I like, usually I just like a double espresso. It's where I go. Just like me, short and sweet, and sometimes a little bitter. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And funny enough, I reference marketing use cases all the time for AI. And I've got another buddy that I always say is, yeah, my friend in marketing is doing this, and he's got quite a complex agentic workflow setup.
Mm,
Uh, you are not that friend, but you are also doing agentic workflows
yes.
far beyond having asking ChatGPT to write you a blog post, right?
Yeah, that was basically I think of like Jasper, and even before the Chat GPT, like that was the big thing, was like, still is, I would argue. And most people don't want to talk about it because they're like, they don't want to admit that they're probably still doing it, right? Creating content with AI. And because they're like, oh, it hallucinates and it's not very good. But from what I've seen, it's gotten a heck of a lot better. And so now people just stop talking about it because they're like, well, there's an arbitrage opportunity where if I don't talk about it, I can keep charging what I've been charging, for creating content, and hopefully no one's the wiser. But what's even more exciting now that also people aren't talking about, and maybe they do a little bit. I see a few. I just saw a blog post today by Adam Schoenfield, who was talking about, yeah, like, you know, the the original kind of like AI solutions and automations were more like, they do say personalization, and it was all about quantity. Like, oh, well, you can generate, thousands, if not tens of thousands of cold emails and cold outreach. And, even if you get 1%, it's still, some good leads that can come in. And everyone just got spammed. And so that's kind of like what the what people, view as the status quo. Yep. It's nice. He actually had a really nice graph. I'll try to pull it up later if I can, but basically he shows, actually, and what I'm seeing is now, it's more value creation. It's more like quality. Like, you can create much better, in my view, like much better, um, interactions, not just emails, but interactions. And I use that word because it's like, it's not just content, as we talked, just as you mentioned, it's across the board. And that's always been the marketing, play, is like, how do you meet your target audience where they are, with the right content or the right message, right? That's timely and effective. And so nowadays, I think, within the last few weeks, I feel like it's like always getting better. I would argue, I think my hypothesis is that the types of experiences you can create for people as a marketer now far outweigh what you could do manually, so to speak, right? Um, it's like analog digital, right? It's like, sure, like you could still, do things analog, um, but I think there's a tipping point, not to sound too marketer, but there is a inflection point happening where, yeah, like what you can do in terms of like using agentic AI, uh, far surpasses anything else that I've ever seen. It's amazing. It really is.
All right. Well, the obvious next question is, give me some concrete ways that you're doing this.
So some concrete ways I think that, people are leveraging this, and to be honest, I know we talk about agentic AI, but this is also harkens back to the big data era as well, right? Circa 2010s, which I certainly lived through. And there's a lot of similarities. A lot of the types of workbooks or workflows that I was building back then using, Hadoop and products like Datamir, right? Is synonymous in essence. It's like Clay is essentially Datamir like 3.0, if you ask me. It really is. Because it still uses that same workbook, kind of format, which everyone's familiar with. So the concrete example is we're using Clay at a number of our clients to essentially create the type of workflow where when we recognize an intent signal, whether that comes from like someone who just started a free trial or someone who just within an account posted a new job opportunity, we can basically um, get a sense of that person and that account, and then use agentic AI to not only craft an outreach kind of sequence, if you will, not just through email and phone calls, but like we can create like really cool memes, like with that person's actual image, right? We can use, like I recorded a founder's voice the other day. So like I can use his voice now to basically have like a personalized message from that founder to a prospect. Which I know, I mean, people are gonna see this and hear this like, "Oh, that's so sleazy that you do that," but, I mean, it works and it's quite effective, and so
Wait, so
there's yeah.
my big question is why is that or how is that agentic?
Mm. Yeah, I think the agentic part is, where you're using, what you would call, like, AI researchers or AI agents to go out and look for these signals, right? And it's quite impressive. Like there's a whole industry of products out there that charge a lot to get this type of information. But if you have an agent that you've developed that actually can go out there and essentially do the type of operational research that like an SDR would do, like a sales development rep would do. So for example, um, you can basically write an agent to go and basically check their LinkedIn profile as you would, as anyone would. Like basically mirror. Like I literally like one of the first things I do when I onboard a new client is I basically sit like shoulder to shoulder to them and basically and map their kind of their workday, right? Like what do you do when you get up in the morning? And they're like, well, I go obviously check my emails, but then I go on LinkedIn, I'm looking at who came in, like signed up for a trial or a form or contact us, whatever. So basically, I won't take you through the whole spiel, but I sit down, I go, okay, what is this person doing? And then I turn around, I work with our development team, and I say, okay, how do we recreate that with an AI agent to do exactly the same thing, so that we can scale them from an individual to a number of agents that can do that for them. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Yeah, and now I guess where I'm trying to see is like you have someone that shows these strong signals, and I really like that where, oh, there's a job posting or there's sign up for a free trial, and potentially what the best action is having an SDR get them on the phone
Right.
right away, but that's easier said than done.
Right.
And so you want to entice them in other ways, and you don't want to have that SDR have to spend 10 or 15 minutes creating a meme that may or may not get read. And so, how can you create these workflows that are leveraging your creativity of going out there and getting prospects to answer, but that also are not having the workforce have that like time intense activity?
I mean, I think that's what's exciting about this, at least as far as I can tell, is that I think there's a lot of like people who might make the argument, well, if you can do this with AI agents and you don't really need, a sales development rep or what have you. But that's not what I'm finding at all, because it's not like these things are, copy and paste. Every SDR has their own kind of flavor of how they, style really of how they do things. Sorry for the background noise. I'm on campus. But they have their own, style of doing these things. And so that's really what you're doing. And so yeah, like when you basically look at a account, and I definitely do think at the account level, right? Because, beyond say like startups where the founder is likely the person that's purchasing, a piece of software, right? When you get into larger companies, say over 100 million in ARR, it's usually multiple people who make a buying decision, right? You have to go through multiple kind of buyer, decision making, and so I think it really is at the account level. And the reality is there just isn't enough time in the day for them to truly understand like what's in that account. Going through and reading their, if they're a public company, their filings, right? Or if they're a private company, going and searching things like Crunchbase or, PitchBook to see kind of like other information, like understanding their competitor. Like there's a ton of research, right, that goes into it that I think a lot of the agentic AI stuff solves for, which is really exciting. But like you said, there's also the creative part of creating not just like a meme, but also we create entire websites for them, right? So, today, like you said, like, yeah, you're depending on, what the relationship is with that prospect, um, getting them to getting them on a call or asking them for a meeting is probably way, premature, right? Realistically, what you're doing is you're trying to surface and trying to educate them to understand how your product or service meets their specific needs. Because the biggest mistake that I see people make in marketing, at least, is, assuming that it's like a blank slate, like there's nothing there already. And oftentimes there's a lot there already. Like people have built their entire, development environments or entire data, environments. And so you have to find a way how you can reasonably, integrate yourself into that. And so, we build some incredible personalized websites. We've used Mutiny as a vendor for that. There's a whole blog that was written about how we did that at a client called Single Store, which was exciting. We're doing that also, creating customized like LinkedIn ads for specific accounts, a specific messaging based on what we find. And it works. I mean, it's been crazy because I've actually seen target accounts like thumbs up and like LinkedIn ads. I've never seen that before in my time, where like the account itself is like giving us a thumbs up for the ad because it's so, on topic, right? It's so on target with like the messaging. So anyways, it's an exciting time to be a marketer, I would say.
So let's run through a few more of these use cases. I think they're fascinating. I've seen folks on the marketing side who are buying Google AdWords.
Mm,
They will use LLMs to update the AdWords because every once in a while you get certain keywords that go stale,
yeah,
or you have to continuously be checking
yeah,
your AdWords account and making tweaks and whatnot. And so they'll use LLMs to help them optimize the spend there and just update these stale keywords.
yeah.
I've also seen it for keywords with SEO
Hmm.
and using a tool like Ahrefs or just a keyword,
Yeah,
basically a
SEMrush and
SEO.
those. Yep.
Exactly, SEMrush, getting the CSV maybe for certain keywords that you're trying to rank for, and then the LLM can tell you what other keywords you might want to be ranking for and which ones you should really try to optimize for because they seem like they have the best score.
Yep. Yeah, and then there's also negative keywords, right? I mean, generally how I've seen this work in the I think the analog to digital is a really good kind of construct, the way to think about this. Like, pre LLM, post LLM. Like pre LLM or analog version of this is downloading, the CSV file of all of your keywords for the last 30 days or 90 days, whatever the window is, going through and basically, marking the ones the keywords that are, that are leading to a conversion, and the ones that are not leading to that are not. And so those are what are called like negative keywords, right? And so you'd literally manually go through and like check, make those checks, and then re-upload, those keywords into your campaign. And that's kind of how you would do it. There's also other ways, like you can let like Google decide for you, like just say, actually, I'm going to have Google optimize, my keyword list, but I don't know. But yeah, I think that's a really cool use case. I expect to see that a lot more. I think what I'm hearing actually, even interestingly enough, like Google AdWords itself, I feel like I don't know if you ever listen to that All In podcast, but there's a lot of conversation about what search looks like in the age of LLMs and chat GPT. And so now I can see like the, UTM parameters coming in for a lot of my clients. Cause I'm definitely like a pretty firm believer that you have to UTM every link ever. So you know what's going on. And so I can view a lot of the UTMs, and I've been noticing more and more like the referral being OpenAI and like some of these. So I think the bigger conversation is how do you SEO for LLMs, like for ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you. What I'm hearing from, people like that are SEO experts. I'm not an SEO expert, but people who have told me that in general, it's following kind of the similar patterns, like of getting indexed by search and that sort of thing. But there's still little bit of an unknown about how these LLMs are indexing, right? Um, Blogs and pages and that. But I definitely see like growth in terms of referral traffic coming from ChatGPT. It's kind of wild to watch that kind of like go up compared to like just Google search.
Yeah, I've heard it called answer engine optimization, so it's like AEO instead of SEO.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be curious, like, maybe, as a follow-on, if you had someone, that knows those things better, because I know you have an extensive network of people who maybe can see behind the scenes with some of these things. I'd be very curious as a marketer to know that
Yeah.
because, definitely, I mean, shoot, I go to ChatGPT now more, than for sure than Google search, like, to get answers, for sure. So, yeah, I think that's a big kind of tectonic shift that's happening in marketing right now.
Well, and the whole conversation is around, okay, our click-through rate or basically our page views are lowered. We're getting less traffic sent to us from search, but we're still getting more relevant traffic.
Yeah.
And so even though it's less, we're getting relevant traffic because it is, again, that answer that will link back to you from ChatGPT or Gemini output. And it's like you're 8 steps out of 10 on your journey,
Yeah.
and you don't need to sift through all this, like, super top of the funnel crap that wasn't getting you any actual paying customers. It was just getting your SEO agency a whole lot of coin.
Yeah, you've tapped into something that's just the so-called tip of the iceberg. I mean, there were so many, I would say circa like 2020, 2021, like the last 5 years, I feel like that whole game of top of funnel, marketing has just gotten blown out completely. Like I would be very surprised if there's a single CEO or CMO that even like, we used to call it vanity metrics, and somehow it got like lost in the shuffle that it's still vanity metrics. And and what would happen is not only would you get, I hate to say junk traffic, but you would. I mean, you even get bots and things, right? That would come in and people would pat themselves on the back. But even more so, they say, well, but at least they like signed up. And then you go and look at those signups and they're like all Gmail, Yahoo, QQ.com, like, and again, I hate to say garbage signups, but they were. And so one of the things that's actually been kind of a breakthrough with a lot of my clients is in fact using these AI agents to do research on those emails to actually figure out who these people are. And a lot of people don't realize, like, you can actually, I mean, you have to be really careful with PII and all of that, but you can figure out who they are now, and you can say, "Oh, this is actually a competitor, that's in there trying to, like, get information," and so we didn't know that, like, with a few of our clients, and you can kinda put them on a different path, so to speak. So, um
Wait, so how are you doing that? Just by creating workflows that are researching the Gmail addresses and
yeah. Yeah, so you can basically, use, their, I mean, they give you a couple pieces of information. It's, I think there's a guy, who does a lot of the training for Clay. His name is Yaz. And he says, like, one of the, back in my, college days, I used to work for UPS to pay my way through school. And when you're stacking, I used to load these containers like full of boxes. And they used to say there's like a cornerstone box. And like the program was actually called Cornerstone. And so you has to take a box and you start in one corner of the trailer, right? And then you build your wall from there so the boxes don't fall on you when you're loading. And that's kind of what this is. Like, you have a cornerstone piece, which is basically, for now anyways, is your LinkedIn profile. Um, and so basically, um, you can try to search using these AI agents, uh, their Gmail, and then you can see, also based on their, first and last name if they give that to you. And there's ways, to figure out who they could be. And it's not 100%. I think we get about I'd say the industry average right now is about 40-45% hit rate. So you still don't, there's still a bunch that you don't know. But the bottom line is, like, we're implementing this idea. Like, I don't know, most people have, like, MQLs, SQLs, they have lead scoring. Like, that whole, like, domain is completely, getting upended by this AI kind of evolution, right? And I call it evolution, not a revolution, because it is, it's evolving.
why is it no more MQLs?
Well, because it's such a rote, analog model, right? It's like, well, they clicked on 4 links, or they visited your website, and they also attended a webinar, and they downloaded a white paper, but that's not really like they're ready to purchase. They could just have a lot of free time on their hands. I don't know, right? I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, and that's probably true. And then the alternative is then you get like a SQL, which is a sales qualified lead, right? And they're going to say, well, this is a really good lead because I know a guy who knows a guy, and and we think that they're really, a perfect target for our solution, and so on and so forth, you know. It- But really what you want is an AI QL, which kind of removes a lot of that subjectivity, I think. I mean, there's a new type of subjectivity coming from AI, but what it can do is, like I said, you have to feed it a bunch of signal, right? Like I said, so job postings, public filings, org, like there's the org chart, right? So there's a website called .com. So there's ways to figure out, like, who's who in the zoo. Like, that's a buddy of mine used to say that at IBM all the time, which kind of got annoying after a while. But anyways, but it's true. It's like, who's who in the zoo, and who has the budget, and what are they willing to pay, and do they have a competitor already, and what's the relationships like? Because yeah, like, I'm sure, like, it's a very complex, thing to sell, sell enterprise software into a large organization.
Well, one thing that I am trying to wrap my head around is you get all these signals, you get all this data, and some of it may be incomplete. And then where are you throwing all of this? Just into a context window and then asking an LLM to say, are they in the buying cycle or not? And then they get a score that gets fed to the sales team? Or how does that process look of, hey, we got all these signals. This person looks like a green light. We should reach out.
Yeah.
We automatically reach out with AI and we get something back, and it only gets surfaced when they respond because we've done all these cool memes and this audio generation from the founder.
Yeah.
Like paint the full picture end to end for me.
Well, we have, so one of the other things that we developed, is a unified kind of inbox, right? And so we feed all of the kind of the outreach, if you will, into kind of a single inbox, and anyone can view in the company. And so, when someone replies back, like, to one of these, tactics, we can immediately have someone jump in and say, "Hey, yeah, I saw, that you are interested in such and such or so and so," and we can immediately start that conversation. But yeah, if they hit a certain threshold where, they put out a job posting that mentions, for example, like, for one of our clients, they're targeting like MySQL shops because MySQL is known to basically, basically tap out after a certain level of concurrent users, right, for an application. So we're always looking to say, okay, they're trying to do some implementation of MySQL for some sort of SaaS application. So when we see that kind of job posting and it kind of mentions some of these things, then I actually take, like you said, it's within that context window, and then we actually integrate into Slack, and so we have our own little bot, if you will, within our because that's where people live nowadays in Slack, as I'm sure you know. And so we have a Slack that actually pings the rep and says, "Hey," like as a person would, as an SDR would, it says, "Hey, I noticed, your your coverage this area, or you're the AE, the account executive for this account, right? You should know that they just put out this job posting, and here's the hiring manager. Here's their LinkedIn contact. And by the way, here's some interesting facts you should know about them. They happen to be a marathoner, or they like to paint in their free time, or they have kids, or what have you. And then you can actually they themselves can also write a really nice note, which increases their odds of acceptance.
And so you're getting that ping. Do you have the capability? Because I can see this being like the marketer's cursor in a
Yeah.
way where
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can
That's a really good analogy. Yeah.
y and you can go back to the bot and say, "Draft me up a LinkedIn message that is relevant, like, what we're doing, and the job post has X amount of crossover."
Yeah. I think that's a great analogy. I think Clay is probably the closest thing I've seen, but it's still pretty, like, workflowy, you know what I mean? Like, there's still a lot of I don't think we've really now if someone has at Y Combinator or somewhere else wants to talk to me and we wanna start something because I don't think there is a cursor for marketing yet. I do think there should be. I do think there should be a way to like you can with Replit or Cursor, right? Just go in there and say, I want to launch a campaign to, cybersecurity companies, and it'll automatically create, the entire, campaign that includes, ad copy and creative, the messaging, a target audience, the landing pages, the white papers, the content based on all that. Like I'm not aware of anything that exists. Today I have to I mean, that's why I have an agency, right? Is because it doesn't exist and I have to do that essentially manually, but stitch all these things together. So there's a lot of bespoke solutions that touch like what we've been talking about, but I feel like I'm more of like a system integrator for marketing today, right? Is really what the job is today as a marketer. It's you're a system integrator, period. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was just talking to friend Sean last week on how if you look at any job, what people are doing in their job is just they want the end result. You want the job to be done type of thinking where you don't buy a drill to drill things. You buy a drill because you want to put a picture up on the wall. And so you need to drill a hole in the wall and then you can hang that photo. So
Right,
you want that end result.
right.
But there's all these steps in between. There's these tasks in between, and maybe some of it is moving data from over here and putting it over here,
You're right.
or it is creating something over here. And so all these tasks that you can break out in that whole end-to-end flow is where you are starting to see now AI play a part in some of these tasks, whether or not it is helping with the productivity of you're able to spin something up faster, or it's just it can go ahead and do it for you. And then you can give it the sign off, or sometimes people don't even give it sign off, they just throw out shit.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point. I think there's 2 points in there that you made that are really important. One is you absolutely need to still sign this stuff off because it's still not 100%. I think I had a I had a salesperson share with me the other day that we totally got the name wrong of this person for whatever reason, and I was just like, the guy's like, "That's not my name, and that's not what I do." It's like, crap. And it happens, right? I mean, there's still some margin of error with these things, and so it happens. But you basically own it, and you say, "You're right. This was we got too ahead of ourselves," and But I think even humans make mistake. I always think about like the argument against like self-driving cars. It's like, oh, there was one accident this year, and so we should just cancel the whole program. Like, wait a second. Like, how are humans doing out there with the car driving and the in the marketing situation? Like, I don't think it's 100% either, last I checked, right? So, we have this weird, like, I thinking that, we should hold AI to this higher standard that we do humans for some reason, and I think that's a little bit misplaced. I'm like, I get it, like, we should do better, but on the other hand, we should really be where the second comment that you made about buying the drill, again, I think you're absolutely right, and, using that kind of analogy, what's the biggest thing, at least for me, when I'm hanging a painting? Like, missing the stud, right? So, again, you have to find a signal because I can build amazing campaigns, but if I miss that stud or if I miss the target, all of that's for naught, right? And so that's why these AI agents are so critical, right, for marketers is because you can spend I've seen literally like people spend millions and tens of millions of dollars on campaigns because they had the wrong messaging or they had the wrong audience or they had the wrong offering. And all of that could have been avoided had there been a bit more research done at the start to really deeply understand the pain of what that prospect is going through. And that's what I think, a lot of marketers just don't have the time to do because they're so focused on like doing the tactical stuff, right? So I'm actually like think there's like a renaissance coming of marketing because we're not going to be, charged with having to spend 90% of our time just like finagling things and building. We can actually spend more of our time like really understanding the customer, which is I think what marketing is supposed to be doing at the outset. But anyways,
It's just funny that you mention, "Hey, I'm a systems integrator," because it goes back to what my friend Sean was saying is that we're all going to become architects,
yeah.
and we are going to be as good as we are able to architect our system. And so if we can put all these disparate pieces of AI capabilities together and make a cohesive system out of it, then we're going to get so much more lift from that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think we're like I said, I think we're really at the early days of this, but who am I to say? Like I just have my little purview. I'm sure there are people that are doing amazing things that they don't talk about, because it's probably their IP. Um, but yeah, I would say that it's it's really quite fun. I mean, that's the other part about this. Like I remember like marketing used to be really fun, like in the 2000s, I guess, like in the age of the internet and all of that, and then, like, we ran, like, some amazing campaigns, and people had really fun with it, and then, like, it stopped being fun, like, I think developers, like, lashed back against marketers, like, it was, like, with pitchforks, like, and going after I was at a, conference not too long ago, and I was sitting in a room, now I'm trying to remember which one it was, but it was a while back, and, I think it was a Kubernetes conference in Chicago, that's where it was. And, so these are pretty hardcore developers, and so I was sitting, in this, like, investor room, and I mean, it was just like I almost, like, wanted to, like, sneak out of there because 'cause I'm like, they're just, like, just bashing marketing, like, "Oh, like, marketing always gets developers wrong and don't hire them and they're terrible." Like, "Oh, no, gotta get out of here." Um, but I still think there's a little bit of that, and I get it, like, I think there's been, times look, I lived through the IBM Watson era, quite honestly, right? So, I can tell you, like, there was a bit of hand waving, at that time, quite honestly, right? Which has been I think is fairly well understood at this point. And so, yeah, I get it. Like, marketers are trying to push the envelope and get people excited about a new technology or a new service or a new product, and they sometimes go too far, and that's something you have to be really, really cautious of.
But going back to this point, I just wanted to close the loop on the cursor for marketers or the Devin or whatever, insert your favorite code agent for marketers. I think that is something that would be incredible because if you can prompt the whole campaign.
Yeah, I mean, there already is, ways to do that. Like, for example, there is an integration right now between Clay and Webflow. I don't think it's a great integration yet as far as I know. We personally, like, at Single Store, we use Mutiny. So we were actually building, these pages on Mutiny that could basically customize, yeah, like, based on what we knew about the account, right? And so we can speak to their pain points and use like we literally update the like the customer case studies, right? Based on the customer that came in, right? You'd want to find a lookalike, right, to the customer that you're targeting, saying, did you know your competitor is using us to do this, right? And they go, oh, okay. Like there's always like a FOMO there. But yeah, I saw somewhere recently someone said that vibe marketing is a thing already. I mean, I feel like it's happening. I'm just not like I've been like so heads down that sometimes you forget to kind of look up and look around like, okay, what are other people doing? Because I'm like so in the weeds of building these things, like, go into builder mode and then you pause and you, oh no, someone just like fixed this over there. So, like, I gotta go, like, jump on that train now. So, yeah, it's happening, man. I think it's good that we're having this conversation because it's often interesting to me how I do meet founders, how I do meet, very savvy CEOs at growth companies as well, who aren't really recognizing the opportunity that exists, like, right now, like, this second, right? They're still investing, like, in a lot of these more traditional, like, marketing tactics, like, quite honestly, and no offense to any friends of mine out there, but, like, going to these giant trade shows, quite honestly, it's like, I get it, like, there's a level of, it's cool that you can, like, connect with people in real life, I think that's fine, but, boy, it's very resource intensive, versus like coming in with like more of like a scalpel and like kind of figuring out how to find, how to generate that conversation differently. So yeah, I think there's definitely gonna be you know, there's definitely gonna be a group of people who don't transition fast enough to AI agent marketing, quite honestly, or vibe marketing, if you want to call it that, versus those who kind of stick with the traditional, approach. And I can already see it. I can see it in a couple of places. But I'm convinced that those who jump on the AI stuff sooner than later will likely jump out ahead within the next, few months. I think it's a real thing.
One thing that's fascinating and I'm trying to grapple with in my mind is how we have this whole systems and very much like marketing ops type thing where you are tactical and you're creating very specific and, like you said, almost like these sniper type of bullets that are going out. But then you also have the thought leadership and the brand building
Yeah.
and the stuff that I think goes a really long way, especially because, as you said, 90% of folks that are finding out about you or trying you probably aren't in the buying cycle.
Yeah.
And so you want to figure out how you can keep that conversation going with them until they are in the buying cycle and you can become that trusted advisor. And that's where I feel like you cannot use AI in that type of thought leadership per se, or at least maybe in the way that I'm thinking about it, which would be a podcast, for example,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
going to maybe it's giving talks on stages is also a little bit harder to use AI in that regard.
Mm.
AI can help you write the talk. AI can help you distribute the podcast or create clips from the podcast, but it's not necessarily like you can use Notebook LM and now you have thought leadership because of your Notebook LM podcast.
Right, right. This is what I would say to that. So 100%. I would say 100% that the key to using AI agents in your workflow and in marketing and frankly in business is and this is why, it's assistive versus replacement, right? And it's because you still need that authenticity, right? There's no replacing it. Like people respond to other people. Like people, are human beings, they're not human doings, right? So they're looking for connection. They're looking for, building relationships. They want to build trust. And so what I see is that AI and these agents are just really helping you to distill information. So, for example, I'm working with a startup here at Oregon State University, where we're filming from today, and they have a really cool computer vision technology that allows you to measure, monitor, and manage aquaculture. So if you're unaware, fish farming or seafood farming is more than half of all of the world's food supply, which is absurd. Like it's crazy to think about, right? And already 85% of the wild seafood out there is already basically is no longer available, right? So only like 15% of the world's can go with wild fish. But we were trying to figure out, they were trying to figure out like doing all these like customer interviews, like what to build and how to focus their go to market. So on the research side again. And so we conducted, and this is where, the AI part came in. We were able to use, AI agents to go out and find these types of operations, right? Where they have large enough operations that they could use technology to count fish or count sea urchins or count, whatever, and so we were able to get conversations with these CEOs or these kind of seafood farmers all over the world. Like that's amazing, right? And so we interviewed them using Microsoft Teams, and so we got the transcripts, right? And we fed those into our AI system, and they brought back like here are the concepts that you should focus on. And so to your point, like I don't know, Demetrios, like when you come up with, who your guests are going to be or other topics you should be talking about, I don't know how you decide that. Maybe you're probably a genius is probably a big part of it, but also it's like but how do you, like, take all those conversations you have and synthesize them? Like, now we have Gong, and now we have all these other things that can, like, do that for you, but you still need to marry that with other, information, right, about, these macro moves and these other things that are going on, right? And I think that's the part where, these AI agents can help you, craft a better, message and think about what you actually should be talking about as a thought leader. Um to your point, right? So you're always kind of staying on the cutting edge.
That's cool. But again, uh, it doesn't abstract away the actual time in conversations with folks. It is more the originality or the ability to come up with new ideas. You have a sparring partner now that you can call up or spar with at any moment of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a great, what's the famous line? Like Steve Jobs says that, computers are basically a bicycle for your mind, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this gets to that, right? I think more so than anything. Like it's, working with these AI agents and obviously ChatGPT being, another example that it really is like it's an exercise for your mind. Like you get much deeper insights. I hate to use that word, but you get much deeper insights from working with this stuff than you would normally. So,
Um,
yeah, I think that's you're totally right. I don't think it's a replacement though. I've come to realize that. Like I get pretty excited with tech. I'm like, oh yeah, we can just like ramp this up and we can do all AI SDRs and never have to, pay a commission again. We don't need salespeople. No, that's not true at all. Like there's a big like product led growth. Everyone wants to be like Datadog, or everyone wants to be like Sneak, or everyone wants to be like Docker. I'm like, oh yeah, we don't need salespeople. Like, we're just gonna put our product out there. It's gonna be great. It's gonna sell itself. We're just gonna put all of our money and resources into product development, and we'll never have to deal with sales and marketing people ever again. Thank goodness. No, it's just not. It's just not real. People buy from people. I really believe that. And whether they're buying, whether you talk to them or not, they're still, looking up the company's brand, and they're still thinking about, who's behind the product, right? And so again, like you said, like if you're not out there, basically nurturing or creating your own personal brand as a founder, right? Um, then yeah, I think your likeliness of seeing that type of growth is going to be stymied. I don't think it's going to be the same.
One thing that I wanted to bring up was that when you think about and you hear this trope, it's almost cliche these days on like, oh, now we're not going to need humans to do that. And it's very clear to all of us that you still need humans to do stuff. But what is happening that I have been seeing and a few friends reference to me was that you're now looking at when maybe there was traditionally a Python developer
Yeah,
that would create some kind of a mock-up in Streamlit.
yeah,
All of a sudden, because of Cursor, they can have 3 different types of MVPs that are built with
yeah,
React.
yeah.
It's like you're not now magically freed up with your time.
I think things just accelerate, man. I think they just accelerate. So for example, with this startup, they're called C Stereo, but with this startup, I was like they have a team of developers and engineers, and they they're spending, a good portion of their time on, like, I would argue, like, mundane stuff, and so I think like what you're describing to me is a lot of the remedial work, and I don't mean to sound like derogatory or anything when I say that. I just mean a lot of the grunt work of like standing up a website and creating like a UI UX for like a dashboard, like those sorts of things. Yeah, like I don't think a lot of people necessarily want to work on those things. And so for example, we drove out to one of these kind of design partners, basically like an early customer of our company. I just went in Replit and I'm like, all right, describe to me like what you'd want to see as your dashboard. And I kid you not, like I'll send you the link. Like it basically created an unbelievable, and I said, I want it to look like that. I don't know if you ever heard of that company called FrontPoint, but it's basically like a do-it-yourself security software company, where you go around, you like put in all the different sensors, and anyways, it has cameras and things, whatever. And so like I said, yeah, look at this UI and make a version of this for like aquacultures. Dude, it spun it up in like less than an hour. It was unbelievable. And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I like this. I don't like this." So we just tweak it. And then that gives the engineers actually something to build too, right? So yeah, I think with marketing, like it's like vibe coding, it's vibe marketing, is lowering the threshold for experimentation, which is something that I've always loved. I love experimenting, and I think that's if we can experiment more, we tend to be able to find ground truth that much sooner, you know? And that's what it's all about. So I think a lot of these, breakthroughs are really allowing us, like I said, to spend more time thinking much more deeply than we ever have about these user experiences or these interactions or our messages or even the products that we're building, right? And that's I think what that's what excites me probably the most.